no oil for you. Iran shuts down a key shipping lane after this weekend's U.S. attacks. Plus, Nancy Pelosi rakes in millions, outperforming hedge funds, all while opposing congressional trading bans. And let them eat cake. Wedding cake, that is. Why Italian locals are annoyed with Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez tying the knot. Those stories and more today, Monday, June 23rd. I'm Caitlin Becker, and this is the New York Postcast. The big news today is, of course, the attack on Iran, and we are going to dig into that in depth. But first, a few stories we're watching, including the Iranian decision to close the Strait of Hormuz. It's the first of what Iranian leaders promise will be multiple retaliatory moves after the Trump administration said the U.S. decimated several of the country's nuclear facilities. The Strait of Hormuz is a 21-mile-wide body of water positioned between Iran, the UAE, and Oman, and it's vital. The strait is the only shipping channel for about 20% of the world's oil, and shutting it down could block roughly $1 billion worth of oil per day. Now, one Middle East expert told the Post that Iran would likely take a multi-pronged approach here, using underwater mines as well as shore-based missile systems to cripple the waterway. But the Iranian regime doesn't actually own the Strait of Hormuz. No one does. So this move will likely inflame tensions both in the region and beyond. Now, the United States Fifth Fleet, which is part of the U.S. Navy, is patrolling the area. But if Iran succeeds in putting a chokehold on the movement of oil, the biggest victims wouldn't be the United States, not by a long shot. Rather, China, India, Japan, South Korea, and ironically, Iran itself would suffer the most. And now to Michigan, where a small Detroit suburb is reeling in the wake of the murder of a recent high school graduate. 17-year-old Gwendolyn Smith was shot and killed inside of her own home by her high school bowling coach, who then turned the gun on himself. The victim's father had revealed that the coach had sent Gwendolyn truly creepy emails ahead of this brutal incident. The anguished dad wrote in a local Facebook group that his daughter's killer, quote, deserves to rot in a special hell. Now, former friends and classmates of this coach describe him as a loner who slipped through the cracks. And one woman who knew him says, quote, he was always so gross, always trying to date underage girls. She also said that he had tried to market himself as a photographer, but that it was a ploy to take nude pictures of women. And now a Post exclusive. It's financial disclosure season, and Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi is sitting pretty. In 2024, the former Speaker of the House brought in between $7.8 and $42.5 million. That brings her net worth to as much as $413 million. And yes, I realize 7 and 42 million is a pretty big gap there. But lawmakers are only required to report a range and not an exact figure. So we can't be more precise there. Well, we do know precisely. Her salary is only $174,000 a year. So Pelosi's rather full bank account is thanks in part to different ventures, like a winery in Napa, a political consulting firm, and a stake in a Bay Area Italian restaurant. But it's her stock trading. That's what has drawn the most money and the most attention. She and her husband, Paul, who is a venture capitalist, sold 5,000 shares of Microsoft last summer. That's worth over $2 million. And those trades happened just a few months before an antitrust investigation was announced into the tech giant. They also offloaded $500,000 of Visa stock in much of the same way, shortly before a DOJ monopoly lawsuit. Now, the disclosures come as calls are growing to ban Congress from trading in these kinds of individual stocks. And it will probably come as no surprise that Pelosi doesn't want that. She is on the record rejecting all of those types of moves, saying, quote, we're a free market economy. Now to our big story, Iran. President Trump says this weekend's attack, quote, completely obliterated 3 key Iranian nuclear sites, and he classified the surprise bombing as completely successful. Before and after satellite photos show significant damage, especially at the crucial underground Fordow site, where holes in the mountain from U.S. bunker buster bombs are clearly visible. The aftermath of the operation is still developing. U.S. military installations in the region were put on high alert as Iranian leaders vowed to strike back, and Iran Iranian protesters took to the streets denouncing the United States. Now, as we mentioned earlier, Iran has promised to halt shipping traffic through the key Strait of Hormuz. And in Russia, the Kremlin warned that a, quote, dangerous escalation has begun, adding that other nations are ready to give Iran nuclear weapons. To break this down more, I am joined by Caitlin Dornbos, the Post's Washington correspondent. Caitlin, thank you so much for being here. And I got to start with the big question on everybody's mind about retaliation. How worried should people like you or me or any of our listeners on the mainland of the United States be right now?
I think it's really key that you said our listeners on the mainland, because there is no direct threat of a ballistic missile coming from Iran. They just don't have the capabilities. In fact, since Israel launched its first strike on June 12, they've gone through about half of their ballistic missile stockpile. So even if they had the capabilities to reach us, it would be very unlikely that they would use them. However, we do need to be careful about so-called sleeper cells of terrorists. And that's going to look like your lone wolf terrorists that maybe we've seen in the past, such as mass shootings, or it can even be members of Hezbollah or Hamas, sleeper cells here in the United States waiting in attack. And the FBI is all over this right now, and I'm told that this is one of their main priorities to keep Americans safe. But I just encourage everybody, our listeners, everyone, if you see something, say something, report it. This is an intense time.
Now, the U.S. seems to have acted alone, and that's garnered quite a bit of criticism there. Has the administration explained their rationale for going ahead with this attack without the type of support we would have traditionally expected?
You know, with a strike of this magnitude, you have got to keep around the element of surprise. So you're going to hear that come from the administration officials if they do get criticism. They are going to they're going to have to look at the operation itself. I mean, they were targeting nuclear sites. You're not messing around when you're taking on a strike at this level. You have to retain that element of surprise. And, for instance, when B-2 bombers actually went over to Iran from Missouri, 18 hours, they communicated very little because they had to keep it so under wraps what they were doing. I just don't think that even getting Congress involved, as some have been arguing for, it wouldn't have been an effective or really possible way to conduct business.
Now, what about the politics at home? Did President Trump stake his entire presidency on stopping Iran and keeping Iran in line, not getting a nuclear weapon?
If he did, I think that is something to be incredibly proud of if I were him. It was a very bold move for sure. And he had to ruffle a lot of feathers, not only on the left, but also on the right. You had influencers such as Tucker Carlson speaking out about this, but he took bold, decisive action in order to make sure that our adversary couldn't get a hold of a nuclear weapon. And so, yes, there could be political blowback, but largely the Republicans have rallied behind him, rallied behind our troops, and even some Democrats, such as John Fetterman of Pennsylvania, have spoken about the president and this really bold strategy that he's taken on. And now I do think that now we have to be careful. All eyes will be on Russia as Russia goes and takes on, helps Iran try to create some kind of counterattack. That's where you're going to see the more political frustration, I think, is whether or not this will escalate.
I'm sure we will have you back on to break that down for us if and when it gets to that. Caitlin Dornbos, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And now from our friends over at Page Six. It's a wedding week for Mr. Moneybags, and the local peasants are pissed. Everyone is a peasant compared to Jeff Bezos. The billionaire Amazon founder is finally tying the knot with fiancée Lauren Sanchez, and the wedding of the year is an A-list extravaganza. Guests like Oprah, Leonardo DiCaprio, Kim Kardashian, Ivanka Trump, they will all live it up in Venice, Italy during a 3-day celebration. But the Venetians aren't entusiasta about any of this. Locals have been plastering the city with posters saying things like Venice Land, a playground fit for an oligarch. And they even hung a very large banner off the famous Rialto Bridge that read, quote, "No space for Bezos." Venice's mayor doesn't seem to be on the same side as his angry constituents, no doubt seeing nothing here but dollar signs. He's on the record suggesting that the event will have a multi-million-dollar impact on the city's economy. Now, the future Mr. and Mrs. Bezos are reportedly trying to throw the plebeians a bone here, instructing wedding planners to minimize the impact that the nuptials will have on the area. Page 6 also reported that Bezos cracked open his big fat wallet for some big fat donations to Venetian charities as part of the wedding planning process. And finally today, they should have hid the sausage. Have I gotten your attention now? How about adding this? Corporate espionage. Okay, no doubt you have all heard of Hormel Foods. They are a Fortune 500 packaged food company, and their sausages are a mainstay of the meat aisle. You probably have some of their products in your fridge right about now. A Hormel employee, Jeremy Rummel, recently left the food giant after decades and was headed for a smaller but also well-known competitor, Johnsonville. On his way out the door, he took a doggy bag, allegedly emailing himself product recipes, processing procedures, and marketing information. This is all according to a federal lawsuit because obviously he's being sued. Allegedly stealing trade secrets is a big no-no. So if you're throwing some sausage on the Barbie this July 4th and you live near Sheboygan, think about inviting Jeremy over. He's apparently an expert. He literally knows how the sausage is made, and I think he's probably going to have some free time on his hands. Who knew the sausage industry was this cutthroat? Also, now I'm hungry. That is it for today. For more on these stories and everything you could possibly want to know ever, check out the New York Post in print or online. And don't forget, like and subscribe to the New York Postcast wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I promise you will be glad you did. I'll give you the headlines, the gossips, everything you need. More importantly, everything you want to start your day.